In the cool marshes of Graal's Great Hollow, a column of Imperial Guard is on the march. For the Empire, only the cities are safe, and the soldiers are nervous. They are right to be. The men of the Odla Horde are on them in seconds. Men who fight without armor and ignore the slice of blade as if they have turtle shells for skin. They scream blood-curdling war cries and show no mercy as the column is destroyed to the last man. Ardouche is a mountain of a man, a human nearly as tall as a half-giant. He occasionally shows off in the city streets by lifting broken-down wagons and holding them steady while new wheels are installed. He has many friends in the sprawling cityscape. Many guilds know his name. He has occasionally influenced the politics of the precinct he calls home. Ardouche is unsure of his birth, but he says he was born in the city, first fighting rats for scraps, then fighting dogs in the ravage pits for coppers. Now he's grown wealthy from mercenary work and questing, a barbarian at home in the city. The Fyrds are a desert people, populated by hunters and subsistence farmers. They inhabit the entirety of the desert continent, living wherever water might be found. The goat herders of the lonely hills, the fishermen of Aramon, the oasis dwellers of the Karachi Plain, or the cave singers of the Aravidi Rift, they are all people of a common ancestry known as the Fyrds. To those living in the cities of the East, or the peoples across the small seas, these Fyrds are considered barbarians. Rules as written, they are far more. Yes, there are barbarians among them, but there are also warlocks and rogues. Religion is important to their unified culture. The clerics are barbarians, as are the rangers and the druids. In many respects, D&D barbarians have always been both a culture and a class. By their very definition, they tend to be a little anti-urban, but even that's not a rule. It's certainly easier than it was before now, however. Back in the AD&D days, they were nearly unplayable due to high stat requirements and the interaction restrictions they carried with them. In 5e, they have become one of the most well-constructed classes in the game. They have a lot of options, and they all center around some basic concepts. Hit faster, hit harder, hit more often. And if you get hit yourself, just walk it off. It sounds basic, but getting the most out of your various combinations of subclasses, abilities, and feats, that takes a tactical mind. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the class, let's take a quick look. Barbs are a martial class, meaning they hit things. They are not necessarily adverse to magic, it's just not their thing. The class gets a lot of hit points, not just bigger dice, but they take half against the most common forms of damage. They get to rage, which means they can do even more damage and have advantage on strength checks. At 7th level, they don't have to worry about being surprised anymore. If they are, they can just get mad and attack anyway. All you have to do is read the ability names and it gives you a pretty good idea. Brutal Critical, Reckless Attack, and Indomitable Might are some of my favorites. Getting into the subclasses, they grant abilities that lead you down the path of full contact D&D. The Totem Warrior is a popular favorite, where the character takes on aspects of the great beasts with which they share the land. Follow the way of the bear to gain resistance against pretty much everything you don't already have resistance to. Everything but psychic damage. Be like the eagle for extra dashes of speed and avoid attacks of opportunity. At higher levels, you learn to track at high speeds, or maybe you just decide to fly one day. Maybe that's too boring for you and you just want to send those old school D&Ders spinning in their graves. Become a wild magic barbarian and learn to teleport around the battlefield or just rot your opponents. It's not exactly something you control, but you're basically an angry spellcaster now. Speaking of old school, maybe you walk the path of your honored ancestors. You get ancestral spirits to help you out. Whenever you rage, Grandpa shows up to fight beside you. He'll protect you. He'll help you do damage. He'll tell you how proud he is of you and the rage monkey you have become. Oh, and apparently, Grandpa wasn't an AD&D guy, because you can cast spells now. At 10th level, your interaction with past relations, they give you the ability to access augury and clairvoyance. The Path of the Beast takes the Totem Warrior idea and goes a slightly different direction. This path will literally transform you. Learn to bite, to claw, or even get a tail whip if you have a tail. As you progress, that feral power just keeps on giving. Swim faster, jump like a kangaroo. The choice is up to you. Next up, we have the Storm Heralds, because druids and tempest clerics, they just aren't mean enough. Learn to command fire, lightning, or cold. Need to breathe underwater? No big deal. Eventually, you don't even have to chase your enemies down anymore. You can just freeze them in place. And finally, at least for our considerations today, we have the Path of the Zealot. These guys got mad and turned to religion. It didn't help. They're angrier than ever. You get to channel divinity for more damage, of course. Feel like re-rolling failed saves? Go right ahead. Eventually, you don't even have to worry about dying in combat. You're too mad to die. Okay, folks, at this point I have to call for a show of hands. Who thinks this video has become a guide to 5e Barbarians? You're wrong. Read the title of the video. Sorry, that was a bit harsh. It's just, I seem to make better videos when I'm raging. I'm so angry. Okay, enough of that. We are here to world build, and world building starts with questions. The first most relevant will be, is there a spread of wilderness on the map that you are world building with a significant non-civilized, that would be mostly rural, non-urban, population of Velito? It might be mixed terrain, special terrain, or really any terrain you want. If the answer is yes, you may have barbarians to world build. Next question, are your barbarians and neighboring civilized folk from the same culture group? Well, how would you know that? Don't worry, I'm here for you. Do they share a language? Do they share a religion? Do they share a calendar? Are they ethnically similar? How intertwined are their histories? Are they traditional allies? Enemies? Have regional events of the last century affected them equally? This might be plagues, famine, war, extraplanar incursions, political unrest, etc., etc. If you decide they are culturally related, you have made things a little easier for yourself. Religion-wise, they might worship different gods with some overlap, but it's still just one pantheon that you're dealing with. Do you have a list of locally important gods? Might be a good idea to decide which ones are important to the barbs and which ones cater to the city folk. While you're thinking about religion, you should probably take a look at the Path of the Zealot. Is this a subculture, subclass, of the local barbarians? Is it a big deal in this region? Are they a minor sect? Maybe they will only exist if one of your players decides to play one. This is great Session 0 stuff, by the way. If you have tentatively decided to exclude them and a player wants to pick one, you have two choices, both equally valid. You can go back and add a tradition of Zealot Barbs, or you can decide your PC is unique, and you can do that together as a mutual decision. Maybe they were just from some barbarian tribe but orphaned and raised by the church. Maybe they had a vision, an overpowering religious experience that grants them the powers of the subclass. Side note to the side note. This is why it's important that DMs have some idea of the direction the characters might be going. You can work life-changing events into your campaign, enabling the player to run the character that they are hoping to. Okay, where were we before we went off on the side note to the side note to the side note? Here we are. As usual, this is not a lecture. Well, not just a lecture. It's also an exercise. So let's hold off with the questions for a minute and make some decisions. Let's create a pantheon with 7 gods. Basic stuff, nothing fancy. Mercy, war, diplomacy, weather, crafting, death, and nature. You, because that's not in the purview of our exercise today, can assign a couple of domains to each. You can name them, and then you can add some lore. For now, we're going to hold off which ones lean towards the barbs, but nature and weather have an edge in my mind. In our exercise, I've decided the majority of our map is uncivilized, but well populated by barbarian clans. Geographically, there is a distinct divide. The coastal plain is heavily populated, but the highlands just won't support urbanization. These guys are goat farmers, subsistence farmers, and hunters. I also feel myself leaning towards extreme decentralization, but we'll deal with that in just a bit. So we now know they share a religion. What about language? I'm going to say yes, with the caveat that it is diverging. The accents of isolated areas are getting hard to understand. In another 100 years, several new Highland languages will have arisen. I'm making them ethnically similar, but some areas will start to favor certain races and species. The dwarves and elves are starting to divide themselves, and the halflings, well, they never really went to the Highlands to start with. They all do share a calendar. To finish out our original questions, I'll say that they have a common origin. 500 years ago, the coast was settled. Over time, the high country was populated as well. Geography has begun to make our barbarian peoples unique. The churches, to their nature and storm gods, teach slightly different doctrines than those in the south. A schism exists between the clerics of these two sects. These two peoples, the barbarians and the civilized, are at peace. No major wars have been fought between them. There have been occasional local border disputes, but nothing major on a regional scale. I would make sure, when coming up with a timeline, that both groups are included in events. But again, I'm not going to get into that here. Shorter videos, must do shorter videos. Alright, we've decided a lot of stuff already. By just talking about barbarians, we've laid down the bones of an entire campaign map. Do you feel comfortable? Secure? That's nice. But I've got this itchy feeling. It's like we're about to get locked into something without asking a very important question. What makes this campaign zone interesting? Since this is a video on barbarians, this strangeness should definitely have something to do with them, right? Let's introduce another tool. I found this section in the back of Tosh's Cauldron of Everything the other day. I thought it was so cool, I'm planning to do a whole video on it. But let's go for the sneak peek. It's page 150 and titled Supernatural Regions. It's got descriptions and event charts for haunted realms, mirror zones, enchanted springs, and so much more. For this campaign area, I like magical phenomenon, psychic resonance, and I'm going to add a new one for special weather conditions. Now, it's going to take some mapping, but once we work through it, we can sprinkle in clan holdings as they have been affected by their environments. Psychic resonance becomes the echoes of their ancestors. Or we could do something crazy and make it the surviving will of an ancient people who occupied the lands before these new settlers. We can pervert the ancestral path barbarians by taking them over with an agenda set by an ancient evil. In the special weather zones, Tempest barbarians are a natural choice. Random lightning, freak windstorms, and long-run tornadoes equal fun and excitement. Finally, where magic phenomenon takes over, wild magic barbs realize their strength and reign supreme. However, this is just the beginning of the possible factions we can create. What if a prominent wizard school of the region was set up near an uncontrolled magical vortex, bordered by psychic echoes whispering the secrets of magic and arcane power? You can still do that normal stuff too. Throw in some tribes that follow the path of the totem warrior, or beast barbs, or you can mix them up however you like. We've given ourselves room to do it all. We've also created a situation where you can run the campaign in barbarian lands rather than starting in an urban zone. Not all residents of the Highlands are barbarian by class. We're creating a great setting for warlocks. Oh, and this is the place for paladin types to clash with or join forces with the zealots. Imagine the interactions that you can create when a zealot barbarian and a paladin, both of the same church, but opposed on an assortment of ground level issues and ethics. Good time for a review. I may have gotten a little caught up in the exercise, but I got most of my major points across. You can create a unique perspective when you world build by certain character classes, keeping them prominent in your mind. Maybe this path started because a number of players were interested in playing a barbarian. Maybe your new job is to encourage a few of them to choose the class. That might be as easy as asking nicely. Maybe you'll have to offer a little incentive. Hey guys, as long as you have 2 barbarians as PCs, I'll give y'all a 5% XP bonus. Assuming you still give XP, of course. Often, just letting them know that you are planning a certain type of game will inspire them to give it a try. However, this is world building, not campaign planning. If they aren't interested in a game of two-handed weapons and uncontrolled rampages, that's okay too. You now know what a great deal of your campaign zone looks like, and you can turn your focus on the cities. If later you entice them into barbarian lands, you already have a great deal of your work complete. You can now focus on the fish out of water aspects of their new adventure. I'm really glad you all stopped by. I had fun talking about world building with you today. I really feel like barbarians are something special in 5e, and they deserve their place in the world. I'm lucky to have so many wonderful viewers. I hope you all got something helpful out of the video. Remember, you have a great deal of control over what comes next. Leave a comment on what you would like to see. More world building by class? What about character race? Maybe you want to hear my opinions on some other subject. I will do my best to respond to any reasonable request. In the meantime, I hope you all have a great day. Remember, you matter. You all make the world a better place. Cheers. Well, that's the end of the script, but I don't feel like I'm done talking. We're going to do this unscripted. We're going to try not to stutter too much. I want to review the map. Mention some things that I realized I didn't mention before. This area is pretty big. I figure kind of northern Mediterranean region. You could easily have a few million people on the map. I figure put about 80% of the population along the coast, say 3 million people. That leaves you maybe 600,000 barbarians. Now, I mentioned something about highly diversified. And what I meant with that is what I'm picturing running here it would be a world that has a lot of pretty small tribes. You're probably going to have some centers in the barbarian areas of areas along crossroads with towns and maybe up to 1,000 people. Even these are probably going to be kind of spread out, but still very close to an actual urban zone. You're going to have a lot of craftsmen here, where markets where people from the tribes can interact. They might be violent. I can see the little sects of barbarians, the smaller tribes, not really getting along. And you're probably going to have travelers, merchants, priests, other public speaker types, diplomats, coming from the South. The South isn't unified either. You could put 20 different states down there. I kind of put some labels in, but you can diversify and split these up. You could make it kind of a Holy Roman Empire, broken up kingdoms where they vote on a sovereign, but a lot of the time they don't have a sovereign at all, or some areas reject the sovereign. You could really get into a diplomatic game here, and the barbarians maybe they have the upper hand, and they're trying to keep the South disorganized by throwing their lot in with different sovereigns and destabilizing the kingdoms. There's so much you could do, and not just because of this map, but in any kind of campaign zone. You can really get into the details here. Speaking more to the barbarians, since that's the point of the video, I can see these little enclaves around the areas that this special terrain creates, the anomalies and the hot spots. And I could see them being some really strange builds with extra, maybe minor magic abilities or just traits like glowing eyes or spaced out looks as they're constantly interacting with ancient ancestors, or at least they say they are. You can work in the what's real and what's part of the culture that's made up, and it's not just one side against the other. You can have some civilized states working with some civilized tribes. Look at the USA before the Revolutionary War, where some Indian tribes worked with the Americans, sorry, not the Americans, this is before Americans, with the English, some with the French. So everybody's a big mix match of being split up. An early adventure in this setting might be that you're sent into the barbarian lands or from another barbarian clan to steal a gem that this tree has grown around, and it causes the tree to grow pears that give you healing. But you get there and you find out that it's also the town's only water source, so you have a moral dilemma. Then you get to choose: are you in with the good guys or the bad guys? And from there, the sky's the limit. You guys have a good day. Cheers.